Thoreau's final essay, published a few months after he died in 1862, I think it was called October, or Autumnal Tints. And it was a naturalist's celebration of all the changing colors and the grasses and leaves, and exploring the science of it, but also extracting the poetry of what it means and what lessons there are for people in observing, for example, the leaves falling. And he said how gently they fall to their graves. If only we could learn to accept our own eventual end as a natural part of life. So, really inspired my thinking about being a New Englander, being resilient as a gay man. What does that mean? Even the stone walls around me took on significance as I learned about them and the construction, the labor that went into building them. I really came to see them as symbols of Yankee grit, of real resilience, real determination, and stick-with-itness. And so I celebrated that, and I thought about all this stuff, and I started thinking about October. I've always loved October. I thought it was the most beautiful month because growing up in Connecticut, it really was colorful. It was back to school clothes. It was smelling the smell of fires burning in someone's fireplace, country fairs. It had really wonderful associations. Thoreau said October is the month for painted leaves. He talked about how in the fall, leaves, when they're no longer producing chlorophyll, the true colors of the leaves, the other chemicals within the leaves, reveal their true colors, the oranges and reds and ochres. And I thought, a la Thoreau, there's wisdom here, right? As we age, our true colors are revealed, for better or worse, but who we really are, the essence of who we are. And I really came to see fall as kind of like the most amazing season of life. I'm turning 65 this year, and it's better than ever so far, I feel like. Dealing with a lot more visits to different doctors, but we do what we have to do, and that is part of resilience. Okay? So Thoreau said, I think that the change to come higher, to some higher color in a leaf is evidence that it has arrived at a late and perfect maturity, answering to the maturity of fruits. And to that I say it's the same thing with people. As we age, we experience many changes in our lives, in our sense of who we are. Once we're no longer working full time, who we were, what our career was, what our identity was connected with our work. And then suddenly, if we don't have that, we're pushed back on our haunches, and the question is, who am I really? When I'm not all about my work or my professional title, but who am I? And so with that kind of question, in mind, is how I explored this whole subject of October. And what does it mean to live an October life? And what are the steps to making it happen? So here's what I came up with. An important point is that even in the autumn of our life, whatever season we're in, we alone get to choose how we will live and who we will be, which of our experiences we will let define us. Is it going to be my losses, my grudges, my resentments, my whatever? Or am I going to celebrate, the fruit of my life's labors and work in the form of good friendships and relationships and a sense of satisfaction that you have used your time well, right? So I suggest that there are 9 steps to cultivate an October life, and that those steps are useful in any season of life, because an October life is really an examined life, really thinking about your life, So the first step, and I think you'll all agree with this, is to connect with nature. Get into nature. I like to hike, and during the beginning of the COVID pandemic, almost 3 years ago, I was living in Eastern Connecticut, and so I sort of remained even-keeled and relatively sane by spending a lot of time out on the hiking trails. And so connecting with nature, is an amazing way of staying mindful, because especially if you're doing something like hiking, you can't be ruminating, which I'm wont to do, or you're liable to get really hurt. When you have to balance yourself on rocks and uneven surfaces, you have to stay in the moment, or it could be dangerous. Well, there's some real good lessons in that for the rest of life. Another one, and I think this is one that we certainly as gay men almost instinctively, I think, understand, and that is to be aware of beauty and to incorporate beauty in your life. I've been into plants and flowers and gardening since I was a little kid, and over the years, I've realized that it's not just the beauty, but it's kind of the life force, that you see in green things and flowers, and so, when someone is sick, you bring them plants and flowers because they're inspiring, they're full of life, and we need that. We need that in our lives. So be aware of beauty. Thoreau said the beauty of autumn is its own reason. It exists simply to be beautiful, which I think is a really cool idea. Another one, understand that life is short and fragile. And I think we all know that one. But, what does it mean in how you live day to day when you think, geez, I'm just happy to be here. So many of my friends aren't here. And it's like, when that's your starting point each day, it's kind of hard to have bad days, unless you kind of choose to, show your true colors. This is one of my favorites about autumn. When you think about autumn and the colors of a New England autumn, or the Smoky Mountains, which I've finally seen and was awed by. If you think about the seasons of the year corresponding to the seasons of life, autumn would almost seem to be a time that you're saying, good Lord, winter is coming, darkness and death, that's sort of scary, that's right there, the next season ahead. But instead, autumn, is flamboyant, just exploding in color. I think of it as kind of defying winter, Even with the cold edge of the breeze in October, it's still not winter, and yet the trees are just flaming out in all their colors. I use the image of Scarlett O'Hara, right? When she was a widow and she was supposed to be wearing black widow's weeds. And I guess Rhett forced her to wear a bright red dress. And of course everyone was scandalized because she was in mourning. And I think of autumn that way, that instead of, oh, woe is me, the winter is coming, it's like, no, I'm gonna wear scarlet, and be just defining what I know is reality. Fifth step is reaping the harvest of a well-lived life, a life in which you have cultivated your garden, as Voltaire said in Candide, where you feel good about the choices you've made. It's kind of a process, I'm very, very into gardening, and so sensitive to the seasons and so forth. So you'll have a good harvest if you tended the crops along the way. It doesn't happen automatically, of course. The sixth thing, store up wisdom. Learn from your life's losses and suffering. It's kind of strange that the ancient Greeks believed that humans would inevitably suffer, that is part of the human condition. But they believed that Zeus gifted us with the ability to learn wisdom from our suffering. And I think that's a pretty profound one, because, in our ages, we've accumulated a lot of losses and disappointments, but it's possible that in how we look at those and their place in our life and the place in life generally, that we can really develop, wisdom about what matters in life and what we value. Pass along what you know. That to me is one of the most awesome things about being an older gay man, is I actually have knowledge, and experience to pass along. Finding folks who are interested in hearing about it is a challenge, but it is possible, and there are a lot of young people who really are interested, in knowing the heroic story of our community, and I do like to frame it that way, because I think we have been heroic. The dress in layers, this is definitely a New England take. Doesn't seem so relevant here, fortunately, but up there in October, typically you would go out in the morning and you're probably wearing either a jacket or sweater, and then a shirt underneath and a t-shirt under that, and by the afternoon you've probably shed a few layers, right? But what that is about is about resilience. It's about being able to adapt to the circumstances that you're in, being prepared, and knowing consciously that you do have skills, resilient skills, to draw on, because you've had to get through challenging situations. And you can call upon those skills as needed, hopefully not needed very often, but they don't go away. And the final step is to protect your roots. And in saying that, I'm thinking of perennials, in the garden, and how certainly up north, in the fall, you have to sort of put pine needles and things around them, and maybe even put fabric over the top of them to prevent them from ice. So protect your roots. And in human terms, our terms, what I mean by that is, really nurture your friendships, your networks of people, and make sure that your roots, are sunk deep, and that they are regularly nurtured by others, and that you in turn are also nurturing other people. So there's a little bit about how to live an October life, and I think that anyone can employ those steps at whatever season of life they're in. So thank you very much for having me.